Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 200. And today's date is October 28th, 2013. And the title of this episode is American Blackout just aired. And now here comes the next event. And what do we understand? We understand that the U.S. government, the central bankers, Israel, Saudi Arabia, all wanted this event to occur. They wanted to get into Saudi Arabia to replace Assad and put in a puppet government, and then eventually move into Iran to keep the U.S. dollar propped up. But Russia stepped in. The American people, Congress, were not for this war. So this whole entire false flag event never happened. Now they are building the case that Iran is very close to creating a nuclear weapon. Israel is out there now saying that they will have a nuclear weapon within 2 weeks. And we have other government officials saying that diplomacy with Iran will not work, and we will eventually go to war with Iran. And the only way to get this started, because this propaganda has not worked in the last 25 years, and the only way to get this started, this war started, is to have a false flag event, most likely on U.S. soil. It is the only way to wake up the American people, and it is the only way the U.S. government, Israel, Saudi Arabia can get America into Iran and start the war to cover up this collapse, because we need to understand that the collapse has started. Everything is falling apart right in front of your eyes. Yes, wherever you're living, whatever you're doing, with most of the people, they don't even realize it. But you know what? People only realize it when it's too late. We are seeing it happen right now. I mean, I still have people coming up to me saying, what do you think? You think it's a good time to flip homes? And the things that I know about what real estate is doing right now, this is not a good time. But again, the corporate media is building up that real estate is really taking off. But what we see is something very, very different, and there's always a lag time. We're seeing a decline in the economy. We're seeing a decline in real estate. We're seeing a decline around the world and in Europe, while everyone else is looking at the corporate media and they're believing that everything is getting better. And this is what happened back in 2007, 2008. Everyone believed that everything was fine until one day everybody woke up and everything came tumbling down. This time, when it comes tumbling down, it's going to be about 1,000 times worse. Let's get into the economic collapse news. Now, like I said, the collapse is happening right now, right in front of our eyes. Everything that I report on is part of the collapse. Greece right now, and I've been saying this many, many times, they are collapsing, and there's no way out of it. They can continually, the IMF, the central bankers, they can keep throwing money at Greece. Guess what? It will never help. Right now, Greece says can't take any more austerity, and they will not be blackmailed to take any more of this. And as soon as the government official said this, on his next breath, they were saying that Greece might need to take the pensions of the pensioners again. And like I've always said, government officials always say the opposite. They always say what they're going to say, and then they do the opposite. We've seen this over and over again. Now, the official was out there saying we're not going to have any more austerity, we're not going to be blackmailed into it, we're done with this, and the next breath is, holy crap, we can't keep this government going, so what do we need to do? We need to take more money from the people. And the finance minister, Yanis Stornaras, hopefully I said that right, said the government will go after pensioners again and cut 500 million euros from the already decimated Social Security system. So guess what? The government will do whatever they have to keep themselves in power and keep them going. They don't care what happens to the people. They will bleed the country dry just so they can stay in power. And when there's no more power, that is when there's no more wealth to take, that is when the people rise up and say, this is it. We've had it. You've taken everything from us. We have nothing left. You are not doing your job for us. And this is when revolutions, civil wars, the uprisings happen. Now we're seeing in Germany the poverty level is now rising. German policymakers are boasting of an improving economy, but the number of households needing government support is on the rise. They are up now. The people that are requiring welfare is up 3.3% to 343,000 at the end of 2012, and it's continually rising. And what else are we seeing? Well, in Spain, Spaniards are leaving their country. Can't imagine why, because there are no jobs. There's nothing for them. And according to the Spanish employment minister, the country is experiencing an unprecedented flight of talent. In 2013, 2,000 Spanish doctors left Spain to find work outside the country, and they're seeing more and more people flee Spain to find work. And on September 13th, the IMF was out there saying that Spain is added to the list of countries with relatively large economic imbalances, saying that the public debt continues to rise in the country. Well, really, they really needed to say this. We're seeing this in France. We're seeing this in Spain. We're seeing this in Portugal. We're seeing this in Greece. We're seeing this in Cyprus. We're seeing this in the U.S. We are seeing it every single place, and there is no recovery. Even though the government officials are out there, like the Spanish government officials are saying that, Spain could be the front runner of a euro area recovery. Spain recovery is on the right track. But when you really look at the country, there are double-digit unemployment, there are high debt levels, and now the mortgage apps have tumbled 90% from all-time highs. What does that tell you? It tells you the country is nowhere near a recovery. The government officials are out there are spewing propaganda to make the people believe that things are okay. And their housing market and their loan creation is the worst in the Eurozone right now. So you can just tell things are not getting better. They're actually getting worse. But guess what? The government officials will continue to say that things are getting better. They've done this with every single crash. All the way up in 1929, they told everyone that everything is fine. Don't worry. There's nothing to worry about. We're coming out of it. And guess what? The crash continued and got worse. In 2008, they told us they weren't even forecasting a crash. Don't worry. Actually, I remember listening when the crash happened in November. They told everyone that they'll be out of this in January of 2009. It was just a blip on the whole entire economy, and it's really not that big of a deal, and that's what the corporate media was saying at that time. But guess what? We are still in it. We're on the third round of QE, and they're looking to even pump up the amount of QE that they're doing right now. And if we look here in the U.S., we see that U.S. factory output rises just 0.1%. U.S. factories barely boosted their output in September, adding to other signs that the economy was slowing even before the government shutdown. The Federal Reserve says manufacturing production rose only 0.1%, and that's down from a 0.5% in August. So things are definitely slowing down. And here's another thing. I know I talk about the real estate quite a bit. Mortgage applications plunging, sales are lagging behind, and they're starting to plunge now. We're seeing new home builders saying that traffic is slowing up quite a bit. Home furnishing stores are going out of business. We are seeing many things happen. If housing is getting better and things are getting better, why is the Fed still pumping in and purchasing the toxic real estate from the banks? Because we understand there's a shadow inventory of foreclosures on the bank's books that they're not reporting at this time, and the Fed is just going in and purchasing those and getting them off the bank's books. But what we're seeing right now is the number of Americans who signed contracts to buy homes drop sharply in September from October. The National Association of Realtors says its seasonal adjusted pending home sales index fell to 5.6% to 101.6, the lowest level in 9 months, and the drop suggests final sales will decline in the coming months. Now, I've said this back in August, moving into September. We have to remember the summer was usually a very good time in real estate, and when you move into the winter months, real estate starts to decline, and you see a huge decline. But what we know is that this was a complete bubble. We understand that most of the purchases of the home were in cash, and the people that were purchasing the homes were hedge funds, investment funds, and things like that. And a lot of the other purchases were not coming from Americans taking out mortgages. So we can definitely see that mortgage applications started to plunge in August moving into September, and there's always a lag in sales. And again, in different parts of the country, it takes time for it to appear. But guess what? As we move into November, December, it's going to show its head every single place, because I remember back in 2007, I was trying to sell my home, and this was in February, March, and I saw a decline in real estate market. The realtors had no idea what was going on. They couldn't figure it out. What happened to all the people just dried up. And my sister-in-law, who was a realtor in Florida, when I asked her, do you see the same thing happening? She said, absolutely not. We are booming here in Florida. It is fantastic. I'm making sales left and right. It's unbelievable. And up in New York, you couldn't get anyone to come to your home. And prices started to come down to see if we can get people to come to see the house. And then you had to bring the price down again to see people. And all the way, the prices kept falling. And it took about 6 months before Florida actually saw the same thing. And actually it started to get a lot worse in Florida at that point. So there's always a lag time in different parts of the country. Now, home sales are collapsing at the fastest rate in 40 months. This is the first annual drop in 29 months, the biggest drop in 40 months, and the biggest miss against expectations in 40 months. So what does this tell us? This tells us that the housing market is completely collapsing at this time and cannot be sustained. Because let's just think about this for a second. There's shadow inventory of foreclosures on the bank's books. The Fed is continually purchasing the toxic real estate. Now, the American people, are tapped out. A lot of people lost their job. A lot of people are underemployed, and their credit is pretty much ruined, because when you have a foreclosure or a short sale, no one's going to give you another loan to purchase a home. So we have all of these people out there not making enough money, lost their homes and their deposits on their homes, do not have the credit to purchase a new home. So who's buying all these houses? Think about it. Not the American people. And let's move this down to the youth population. We understand the unemployment right now among youths who are coming out of college or been out of college and working for a couple of years. That is around 30 to 40, and some people are saying it's around 50%, where people cannot find work in their field. So they are taking part-time jobs, not working in their field, making a lot less money, still living with their parents because they cannot afford to move out. So guess what? These people are not buying homes at this time. This is why in the automobile industry, they had to start giving loans to the subprime people, the people who have bad credit, because the auto industry is starting to decline. Because guess what? Again, we have the same problem. And we can see this happening all over the place. And the unemployment rate is continually moving up. And it's not moving down like the Fed, the U.S. government, wants us to believe. Their calculations are manipulated. And guess what? Those people who are no longer looking for jobs, they just don't count them. So guess what? That's why their unemployment continually drops. And it makes no sense that their unemployment is dropping and real estate is crashing. Retail sales are declining. They're not expecting retail sales this holiday season to be good. And many retail stores are closing. So it doesn't make sense what they're saying, because if more people are getting work, wouldn't that be a happier, better holiday season? Okay, let's move on here. Now, we understand that the U.S. government is definitely coming after the people's weapons because they do not want the American people armed. We understand the UN Arms Treaty, the gun bill are still pending in the Senate. And what we've seen is in Texas, we've seen a man who was carrying a black powder pistol previous to 1899, and those are not in the law counted as a firearm. And the police were harassing this man. They were trying to write him a ticket. He didn't accept the ticket. And people were screaming and chanting, read the law, read the law, read the law. And the police just took him away because he was wearing the sidearm. And they did not look at the law. They didn't say anything. They didn't want him having a weapon out in public. And we can tell just from this that things are getting a little crazy out there. And the government and the instructions are to take those people who are resisting and take them away to make examples of them. Now, Obamacare is a complete nightmare. The Obamacare data center crashed on Sunday. The outage that started in the early hours of Sunday caused the data center to lose network connectivity, and the federal government data services hub could not connect to anything, and no one can get any type of coverage. They couldn't see if they were eligible. They couldn't do anything pretty much on the site. This whole entire Obamacare website, the entire Obamacare health insurance program is designed not to be for the people. This is just to grab the money from the people, to make the insurance companies wealthy, and to create tax revenue for the government. That's it. They don't care about insuring you. And plus, they wasted $650 million or so on this website, and now they're talking about that they're going to have to redo it. And that's $650 million that the U.S. government doesn't even have to spend. They have to borrow it to do this again. So you can see where this is headed. But guess what? They still want to collect the penalties because people are not signing up for the health insurance. Yeah, they delayed it a little bit, but it took like a fight just to have it delayed. Their system isn't working, but they still want the penalties. What does that tell you? Now, we understand that the government needs to continually tax the people, and this is part of the end game. You see more and more taxes. Obamacare is a new tax, and all this other tax that they want to implement, the FACTA tax that is allowing the government to go all over the world to find more income to prop up the government. This is the end game of how the governments all react when they cannot meet their payments and they need to borrow a lot of money. They start taxing every single thing. Plus, what they do is they set up a police state to control the masses. And what we're seeing right now, and I don't know if anyone has gone into the insurance company, but they will give you a measly discount and a little black box that you plug into your car where they can track you and they're able to tell if you're a good driver or not. Well, I think this black box is going to be, and I've seen a report now on it, is that they're going to track you and follow you wherever you go. They are going to tax you on the miles that you travel, and the insurance companies are going to be able to charge you more money if you go through a yellow light that was just turning red. If you're going over the speed limit, they're going to tell you you're a bad driver, and it is absolutely ridiculous. And I would suggest everyone to deny the box to get your little deduction, because this is definitely a police state type of technology, and this will be implemented in every single car going forward. And I believe that they're started already putting these devices into cars to track every single person. You have to remember, the police state is there to create a social profile. They need to know who you are, where you're spending, what groups you're affiliated to, where you travel to every single day, because when the time comes, they need to find you and get you quickly so you're not a threat to the government. And people like, well, I don't care, let them follow me. I got nothing to hide. But the other day, there are thousands upon thousands of federal laws, and if they believe that you're associated with someone else that is part of a group that is threatening to the government, you will also be taken away, and they will use one of these laws against you. And this is why you do not want this. You do not want people following you. You don't want them prying into your private life, because it will be used against you in the end. Okay, now we understand the central bankers, United States government, Israel, Saudi Arabia, the elites, the globalists, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call them. They are trying to set off World War III to cover up this entire Western collapse. And then when I say Western collapse, I mean Europe, I mean the United States, Australia, United Kingdom, any country that has a private Western central bank. And we can see that they're creating new technologies. We can see they are moving military assets to key positions to set everything up and get prepared for what is coming. Now, we see South Korea is developing radar-absorbing paint, and South Korea has developed its first radar-absorbing paint to camouflage its warships, fighter jets, tanks, and anything else that they can use the paint on. And what is happening is they are going to use this as an edge against China and Russia. But what's happening is China is building their own experimental stealth jets, and they're also building stealth detecting radar. So I understand, and we all understand, that the U.S. has just released the first destroyer that is a stealth destroyer. We understand that we have stealth bombers and fighters, and these stealth destroyers are being positioned in the Asian Pacific area, because the United States and all its allies are setting up bases which encircle China, because this is where the war is going to end up, with China and Russia and all the other countries that are part of the BRIC nations. And we can see that this is starting to progress. And since the United States is having difficulties with the new government in Egypt, and some of the aid has been stopped, we see now Russia is making their move into Egypt, and Russia is mounting and determined to attempt to capitalize on America's diplomatic difficulties in the Middle East. They're pushing for greater cooperation with Egypt in a drive that could eventually lead to Moscow gaining access to the country's Mediterranean ports. Every single country is positioning their military assets right now. And we can see, since the central bankers and the U.S. government is losing control of the Middle East right now. They're losing control in Libya. They're losing control in Egypt. They've lost control in Syria when they were trying to pull off this attack. There continue drone attacks in Yemen, and that is falling apart. And Saudi Arabia is looking to pull away now, because they see what is coming down the road. They see the dollar collapsing, and they do not want to be sitting there holding Treasury bonds and U.S. dollars while the dollar collapses. So what are they doing? We understand that they have already told the United States that they might be repositioning and moving away from the United States. And we understand that Saudi Arabia has made a $15 billion weapons contract proposal to Russia. We understand that Turkey now is dealing with the Chinese on their missile defense systems, because Turkey also came out and said we are following Saudi Arabia's what they've said they're going to do, and they are doing the same thing. And we can see what is going on here. And the Saudi Arabia and all the other Middle Eastern nations, the Gulf Cooperation Council, and this is the Middle Eastern countries, what they are looking to do, they are exploring a collective security mechanism in the region that includes a host of players. And one of these players is the BRICS nations. Now, you have to go back to 1970 when the United States as central bankers went into the Middle East and said, listen, if you put and use the U.S. dollar for all your natural resources and make the U.S. dollar the reserve currency, we will protect you. Now we see these same nations saying, uh-oh, central bankers' U.S. dollar is starting to collapse. We need to make other plans. So now they are looking to the BRIC nations to make deals with them for protection. So we can see how this is playing out. The BRIC nations also came out and said, listen, we had enough of this Western internet, so we're creating our own internet and laying the cable right now. And this way you cannot spy or listen in to what we are doing. So the BRIC nations, the Middle East, are all starting to make deals. China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, Brazil, Iran, Syria, India, Australia, the UK. You can see they're all starting to make deals with China and Russia, and all these deals, and can't forget about Kenya, Uganda, other African nations, to become the clearinghouse of the yuan, and to Uganda's making a deal with China to help with their petroleum and create ship off oil to China. And we can see all this happening right now. And again, Saudi Arabia sells more oil now to China than the United States at this point. So we can see all these deals right now are starting to happen, because what is happening right now? The collapse is actually happening. Did it happen all at once? No. It is happening slowly right in front of our eyes. Does that mean it's not going to collapse all at once? No, it probably will. Because what did we see back in 2007, 2008? Things started to slow down. We saw Bear Stearns, we saw Lehman Brothers, we saw the real estate market slow down. We are seeing it now again, but on a greater scale. Now we're seeing other countries taking precautions because they see the writing on the wall. So all of this is leading up to the major collapse. Now, the United States came out with more propaganda that China is having military, a large-scale joint military exercise employing land, air, sea forces to simulate an invasion of Taiwan. And the United States is saying, oh, this looks like a live type of drill, and we're very concerned that China might be looking to invade Taiwan. And the U.S. is looking at this, very concerned that if China does go into Taiwan, the United States might have to take action. And we're seeing they're building up the propaganda, and they definitely want to get this war started. And we know it is going to be with Iran, Syria, China, Russia, most of the BRIC nations, and we can see how this is unfolding at this time. So what is the U.S. doing to protect the Eurozone and the U.S. interests within that part of the world. Well, in Romania, they have started building a base which will form a part of a controversial U.S. ballistic missile defense system. And the U.S. government says the missiles will have no offensive capabilities. Yeah, okay. And they're only going to be used for incoming ballistic missiles launched by hostile powers. Do I really believe that? No. I believe they're going to have other capabilities, and they are going to build this, and they're building it right now to cover pretty much Italy and all the other countries going up through Europe from Romania. Now, in Syria, we are seeing that the inspectors cannot access 2 Syrian chemical sites. And the Global Chemical Weapons Watchdog says that the inspectors in Syria have not been able to reach those 2 areas, and because of security concerns, there's too much fighting, and they don't feel safe going into these areas, and they can't get to them. And what is happening here is that they're going to miss the deadline to get rid of all the chemical weapons by mid-2014. And we have to understand that part of the UN resolution was to hit the deadline marks, and it seems like the central bankers, Israel, Saudi Arabia, the United States, are doing this on purpose so all of the chemical weapons are not destroyed by the timeline that is set out, which will enable the U.S. government to take further action against Syria. And we can see this is definitely building up and moving forward at this time. And like I said, the next event is going to occur very soon. Israel is out there saying that Iran is about 2 weeks away from creating a nuclear weapon, and they are spreading propaganda all over the news. We have here Benjamin Netanyahu out there saying that this also is a threat to Nigeria and Africa and the world, that if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, they will be threatened. And Nigerian authorities broke up what they said was an Iranian-backed group that gathered intelligence on places frequented by Americans and Israelis and made lists of famous people for possible attacks in their country. And we can just see how they're building up. We have Al-Shabaab in Kenya, and also we have the warning in Uganda that there could be some type of attack. We see Israel making threats, using propaganda to build up the propaganda of Iran having a nuclear weapon. We see now there is Nigeria and African nations are getting involved in this, and this is all set up to bring in the next event. And former Vice President Dick Cheney is out there saying that there really can't be any diplomacy with Iran. The only way to stop their nuclear program is by military action. And you can see where they are all headed at this point. They are headed to get into Iran. And this is what this whole entire picture that is being painted fits into the 2 officers that were relieved from their command that guarded the nuclear arsenals. We also have the missing nuclear weapon that was sent to South Carolina without paperwork and then shipped off from there. We do not know where it went. And we also have warnings from Peter King, Lindsey Graham about nuclear weapons in New York Harbor or Charleston Harbor. And we can see how this is all building up. We also have warnings from Al-Qaeda and Al-Shabaab. We have numerous FBI warnings about lone wolf groups that cannot be tracked within the United States. and we can just see that this is all fitting in to the next event. Okay, now we understand that the American Blackout, it just aired, and I watched it, and parts of it. I don't want to give too much away, just in case people haven't seen it already, but it pretty much lays out what I've been talking about a cyber attack hitting the United States power grid. And we have to remember Janet Napolitano, Hagel, Panetta, all these people have been telling us about virtual 9/11s, cyber Pearl Harbors. They've been telling us and explaining to us how the power grid is vulnerable, that the power grid would not be able to withstand a cyber attack or even an EMP type of attack or a solar flare type of attack, and it would knock out the power for the entire United States. And right now, Hagel is out there. Hayden is out there talking about the power infrastructure, how it cannot withstand an EMP attack or a cyber attack or a solar flare attack. And he's been to the Obama administration, and Obama has no plans to defend against any of these type of attacks. The power grid infrastructure is not being hardened to protect from this, and we can see that this is playing into what I call the doomsday cyber attack, because what we are seeing is that if they cannot pull off this war with this next event coming, they will rely on the doomsday cyber attack. And if you haven't seen the American Blackout, there are parts of it where, I don't think they went far enough with it, but you get the gist of what could happen. And I was in the Blackout in Manhattan in 2003, and I will agree the first 2 days everyone was partying, people were having fun, and things were okay. If it went further than that, day 4, day 6, day 8, I can see where people will become very desperate, where people will raid the supermarkets, where people will hoard what they have because they go into survival mode. And this is pretty much what the American Blackout tells you is going to happen. And they take different cases of different people with different lifestyles, and they explain how they're surviving the whole entire ordeal. But going back to what I'm saying is the doomsday cyber attack, because if they can't get the war started, they can't get into Syria or Iran, they can't get this going because they know the collapse and the dollar is about to implode, what they're going to rely on is the doomsday cyber attack, which will put everyone into darkness, which will make people completely desperate, completely unprepared, and completely pissed off at whoever they blame this on. And they will definitely blame this on another country, because the U.S. government, Fed, do not want to be blamed for the collapse. So they're going to definitely blame it on somebody else, because they know they have a certain amount of time and the collapse is coming. So they're trying to get everything ready, trying to prepare for what is coming, and they're going to try a couple events before they use the main one. And we also have to understand that there is the power grid drill in November, and I believe there's going to be a event that will occur before the drill, and which will be in a couple weeks. And we will see how that turns out, just like the Syria event, which didn't go anywhere, and here we are, and we're getting closer to that doomsday cyber attack, because we have to remember this doomsday cyber attack will allow them to do many, many different things. It will allow them to siphon off money from bank accounts, which will be the bail-ins, which will allow them to freeze the accounts and have put capital controls on the amount of money that you can draw. And we have to see right now, they've already started with capital controls with Chase Manhattan, with HSBC, where you can't transfer money out of the country. And I believe other banks are starting to implement this at this time. So we already see this happening. It's happening right in front of our eyes. I mean, it's totally obvious. And the next phase will be the first event to try to get the war started. And if that doesn't go well, we will see some type of power grid attack that will bring down everything. And what I've taken out of this American blackout is many people are not prepared with water, food, supplies. Forget about cash and going to the ATM, because if you do have food, water, supplies, you really don't need the cash at this time. I mean, it's nice to have the cash, but those people didn't really need the cash. The people who needed the cash are the people that were going in buying the $10, $20, $30, $40 bottle of water because the ATMs didn't work, credit cards didn't work. So you can see how that plays out. Gold and silver would work, but you don't want to use that at this time. So it would be easier and less expensive if you stocked up on food, water, toiletries, supplies, something that will dissolve your waste, because, as the power goes out, water will stop flowing. And it's good to have water and these things in your home to be prepared. So what we are definitely seeing is that we are coming very close to this cyber attack that will, or EMP, or whatever they're going to use to bring down the power grid. So all I can say at this point is you need to be ready for what is coming. It seems like the government officials, the central bankers, the elite, the globalists, always like to give a small picture of what is going to happen, and they are giving us this picture right now. And I do believe all evidence points to that this is definitely going to happen. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared.